people who focus on our industry. It is a unique industry. The cannabis plant is handled differently than just about any other thing in the world. So there's things that you can only learn by experience. We certainly felt that as a packaging company, stepping on our toes and figuring out the best way to do things. I'm sure that Steve has also established many best practices to ensure that you guys have, that your investments and all your hard work pays off. So Steve, why don't you come up and take over and look forward to hear what you got to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Oklahoma City. I'm not really a podium kind of guy. I hope it's okay with you if I stand down here with you. Yeah, my name's Steve Landry. My son Pierce Landry is over here. He's recording for me because I don't get an opportunity to stand in front of a room and talk to people very often, but I'm not afraid to. A fellow named Justin Williams from Oklahoma Cannabis Consulting gave Aaron, program directors here, my number yesterday and said, hey, call this guy because who was supposed to be here is not here. So they sent me as the surrogate band. And what I want to share with you is some of my experience in cannabis and answer some questions about real practical working facilities, because that's what we do every day. We're inside of facilities or talking to people about facilities, and how that came to be wasn't an accident. What happened was I'm gonna really quickly try to tell you, in about 2009, I was a construction HVAC worker and I wanted to get the hell out of new construction work. I didn't want to do another house again. I'd started doing Bikram hot yoga. I fell in love with hot yoga. I decided to run off and become a hot yoga teacher. I may not look like it, but I'm a certified Bikram hot yoga teacher, and I owned a studio in Bend, Oregon, and ran it for a few years, where I didn't make any money. I was broke as a yoga teacher, but I was living that dream that I had of being a yoga teacher. And during that time, I was also a stoner, because I've been in HVAC since I was 19, but I've been a stoner since I was 13. And so what happened was, while I was doing this yoga thing, I had a lot of free time to notice that in Oregon, I was in Oregon at this time, and I noticed that the recreation industry was emerging. We had medical marijuana for years in Oregon at that time. I wasn't part of it. I didn't have my card. When I was in construction, I was busy building houses and I wasn't building facilities. So I really wasn't paying attention to the industry like we're all paying attention now. And what happened was, as Oregon was changing recreation, I decided to watch the industry. So I had a little Instagram page for my yoga business, and I started following everybody in Oregon that was associated with cannabis in any way. If you were on Instagram and you were talking about cannabis, then I followed you if you were in Oregon. From trimmers to investors to the dispensary guys to the farms, whoever you were, I followed you. And what happened was, one day in, I want to say, late 2016, early 16, 15, right in that time, I see this picture of the rooftop of a facility on my Instagram from a business called Deschutes Growery in Bend, Oregon. And they're showing the rooftop covered in solar panels. And coming from construction, I saw that, and they're talking about their investment they're making. They're trying to offset their high electrical use, and they're trying to do their part. It's marketing, really, but they're trying to do their part. And so when I see that, I realize these guys are doing something. I need to get next to them as a construction worker. I need to get next to these guys who are spending money in construction. So I reach out to them from my yoga page, and I'm encouraging you, any of you that don't use the social media like Instagram, use it, because this is how I got into this industry. Was I took my yoga business page and I reached out to this huge grower and said, hey, besides being a yoga teacher, I'm also an HVAC contractor. I'm licensed and insured and bonded. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. Next day I got a message back, there might be something you can do for us. Got a phone number. I got a phone call. Can you come down to the facility and meet us? I go down, and the first thing they asked me, they said, well, you know, we're going from medical to recreational, and we got to get straight with the city. Because in the medical industry, nobody was asking for permits and plans and inspections. People just built whatever the hell they wanted to, in whatever the hell they wanted to, and that's what these guys did. They took a shop, a metal building, and they built everything inside of it, cut a bunch of vents on the side of it, put all their mini splits and heat pumps inside this facility to hide it from everybody, because they were coming from the medical, where before that you had to hide it from everybody. So they were still practicing that. And they said, we've got to go back to the city now and get permits and inspections. We've got to change all this electrical that's illegal and da-da-da. But on the HVAC side, they asked me, can you write a letter to the city and tell them that everything we did was legal? And I said, yes, I can write you a letter because I want to be on the team. But knowing that my letter isn't going to mean anything to the city. But I said, yeah, I'll write you a letter. And I wrote a letter saying that their stuff was clean and looked right and proper and so on, but I wasn't a part of the facility, and that's it. Well, they're trying to get a permit for an expansion at the same time. And so they've got new planning coming. And a week later, the owner calls me up and he says, hey, Steve, the city wants to know if we have a plan for the HVAC, the mechanical. And I said, well, didn't you tell me the architect just drew your floor plan? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, send me that and I'll draw your plan on your plan, because that'll be a good place for it to be. And that was really when I first put real effort into learning the nuts and bolts of what the cannabis industry does. And what they did is they had their floor plan of their building, and what I had to do was draw everything that they had done. I didn't do the work that they did, but I had to provide it to the city in a reasonable manner that somebody could look at it intelligently and go, oh, there's fans in there, and there's lights in there, and there's air conditioners in there. And so as I spend this week drawing this thing, you gotta understand, I'm a pencil and paper guy. I don't have a computer. Remember, I'm a broke-ass yoga teacher on this day, right? I literally live inside of my studio, sleeping on the floor, hiding from my landlords for 5 years to do this yoga thing. But I want out, and I see cannabis is like, hey, there's opportunity over here. So I draw on this plan, and while I'm doing it, I realize you guys just handed me a fast-track education on how you used to do what you do. Because at this moment, they were going from an HPS, so HPS is lights, if you know about lights, so they were going from the old technology of HPS to LED. They were converting at the same time. They're also going from medical to recreational, so they're completely reinventing their whole business. And so with that, I saw that, oh, this is how they used to do things. And then they said, hey, help us do this new thing. And so the new thing was, one day they brought me into one of their grow rooms. They took all the lights out. They used to have 18 lights hanging in this room. This room's about the size of a one-car garage. They took all the lights out. They brought in this racking company called Burroughs, and they make these movable racks for like universities and libraries where you crank the rack and the whole book aisle moves over and opens up an aisle for you to go down. Never seen anything like this. So they put these 6 racks in this room, and on these movable racks, because the idea was to fill up the square footage with plants and only have one aisle, right? So they have all these racks in this room, and they bring me in and they say, hey, we're gonna put plants here, and we're gonna put lights here, and plants here, and lights here, and plants here, and lights here. 4 levels in just a 10-foot tall room, they're gonna grow plants. I'm not from the industry. I don't know that this is gonna be a challenge. All I know is I've been given the opportunity to figure out how to build what they want. And what they said to me is, we're gonna put the plants here and the lights here. Can you make something that will blow air under the plants, under the lights, over the plants, and not blow the plants apart? I said, yeah. And I went to drawing a little drawing. And I sent them this little sketch. I said, this is what I'm gonna do. And then we went in and I built that system for them. And we tested it. But at the same time, they've also completely changed how they do what they do. Because they used to grow big bushes under big hot light, and now they grow very small plants. So they load this room with 3,000 clones that they've just rooted. They load the room with 3,000 plants that used to have 18 bushes in it, right? And they grow in about 8 inches of soil, so they're not the super nerds of the living soil realm, but they're semi-nerdy, right? Because they want their plants to be in dirt, not in anything else. So they've got 8 inches of dirt. From the top of the dirt to the bottom of their LED lights, I've measured numerous times because people don't believe me. There's only 18 inches for the actual plants to grow in. When the plants are done growing, they're touching the lights because they load the room with clones, And 1 week later, they flipped those plants, and now they're flowering these plants. And in 9 weeks, that area that was void of anything but the little clones is now nothing but flowers on 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. So it's a pretty intensive process. It's not for everybody because they have to also have 24,000 clones constantly coming to fill the 7 flower rooms that hold 24,000 clones when they're loaded, right? So that's where I first started in this industry. I started building these ventilation systems and I started showing them on Instagram. And if you're not on Instagram and you want to be in the cannabis industry, then you need to be on Instagram because your competition, your industry is on Instagram because it's the show and tell platform. And that's what I did. I showed and I told what I was doing at facility. People started noticing this is different. We don't see this anywhere else. And what happened was in 2019, the reason I'm in Oklahoma City with you today was a fella from Colorado was coming to Oklahoma with everybody else that came to Oklahoma to start a facility with some investors from Oklahoma City. And he says, hey, I want you to build what you built in Oregon for us in Oklahoma City. So my son and I came out here and we built a couple rooms for these guys in Oklahoma City, and we started observing that there was a lot of work in Oklahoma and there was no reason to go back to Oregon. I'd lived in Bend, Oregon for 25 years and I was done with Oregon. I want to live somewhere else. You might think it'd be odd to move from Oregon to Oklahoma and love it, but I didn't move from Oregon because of the scenery. I moved from Oregon because of the people, and I fell in love with Oklahoma because of the people. And that's why we decided to stay here. It was not just the work, but also the people. And what we found was some facilities we started meeting, and we got the opportunity to do work, and we built some big facilities down in Noble. We've built some dry rooms now for people in several parts of the state. And today we kind of specialize in more, we've been able to become specialists and not have to be the HVAC guy. So I don't have to install mini splits and heat pumps and air conditioners anymore. What I do is I go in and give some direction of what your HVAC guy should do for you. And so let me tell you that if you're going into this industry, the biggest challenge that facilities have is humidity control. That's the number one thing that growers struggle with, and that's the number one thing that they call me about is, our room is too humid, can you do something about it? Well, remember, before cannabis industry, I was HVAC contractor since age 19. Well, when I was 19 and 20 and 21, I worked for refrigeration contractors, not HVAC contractors. And the refrigeration guys are the guys you need to get involved in your facility because they know a little bit more science. They have to deal with a little bit more critical things like making ice. You would think making ice would be pretty simple, but being able to repair an ice machine is one of the most difficult things as a mechanic I've ever had to do. So it's the control of environments that HVAC guys, why you need to partner with a good HVAC guy if you're involved in this industry and facility-wise, is because the electrician and the plumbers, they go home, but when the humidity is too high or the room's too hot, you're gonna call the HVAC guy. So we've done some very large facilities, but I'll tell you, I really enjoy working for the mom and pop businesses because most of my life I've worked for mom and pop businesses and people that are there every day. We have a few facilities we work at. We got one right now, it's really big, and most of the owners aren't around and they're just the money, and the people that are in the building every day, it's kind of not as organized because nobody's in-house that should be in-house. So if you're gonna try to run a facility remotely, know that from a guy that works in facilities every day, it's not the best thing for your facility. We build, one of the things I brought to the cannabis industry, that one of the reasons why they found me and other people said, hey, you should maybe have Steve come and talk, is in this dehumidification challenge that this industry has. When I first started working for you guys, I would follow them, like the Deschutes Growery. They'd say, go do this, put this in, put this dehumidifier in, move this heat pump. And so I just followed because I was the new guy and I wanted to be on their team. So I followed and I did what they asked. But I kept thinking, why are you guys doing this? I was thinking, why do they do this and why do they do that? Because nobody does that anywhere else in the world, only in cannabis do they do this. And so a lot of things have become the normal in the cannabis industry because of the black market era, because the guys didn't have a place to go and get real solutions. So they got solutions from these places and people that they shouldn't have got solutions. There's a lot of things that have come into this industry that don't really serve facilities on the HVAC side, but it was just out of necessity that it came. And one of those things is, you see these dehumidifiers. If you go and you visit grow rooms, or you have dehumidifiers hanging around your room. And what I first noticed was the plan is when the lights shut off, the AC shuts off because the AC is on because the lights are on, but when the lights shut off, AC shuts off. So then they got to turn on this dehumidifier to dehumidify the room, and it's not big enough. It's only 2 horsepower. And I'm looking around the room going, well, why did we turn off the 5 horsepower compressor and turn on the 2 horsepower dehumidifier? Because all air conditioners are dehumidifiers. So I started, again, you gotta understand, when I came into this industry, I came from the role of mostly a service-based contractor, where when you call me, you got a problem, you're calling me to solve that problem. And if I wanna eat, I solve the problem, right? So when they came to me and they said, hey, Steve, we started building these new rooms, LED, 4 levels. I don't know anything about it. I'm just helping them put it together, and then we get one running. And then we get a second one running. When we got the second one up and running, that was the first room that they built that was what we call a sealed room. Most old rooms, you think about a greenhouse, it's not very sealed. So when people started growing indoors, they ventilated the rooms, for free air conditioning. Bring in outside air, push out the hot, humid air, free air conditioning. That only works to a point. And so as this industry has evolved, the indoor part of the industry, it's evolved to more of a sealed room so that we can control the environment properly. Right? And once they sealed the room, now they didn't have that free air conditioning and ventilation, and the humidity was in there. And they came to me and said, Steve, can you do something about the humidity? The temperature is okay, but the humidity is too high. So I go and I check this piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment. And I go back and I said, everything's doing what it does. It's all working properly. We're not gonna get any more performance out of this equipment. Okay, so then they said, well, maybe we need 2 dehumidifiers, because I had put one in that room for them who was in question. And I told them, I said, maybe you need another solution, because that's a solution that never shuts off. That's another thing that I learned working for these guys, is with the energy company, like for rebates and so on, program company that works with the utility company, they were in there doing some auditing, and we put a data logger on one of the dehumidifiers in one of the rooms. And I noticed that at a certain point of the growing cycle, at week 6, when they made an incremental adjustment of temperature and humidity like they do, from that adjustment forward till week 9, that dehumidifier never stopped running 24/7. It was on. Why? Because it never satisfied the load that it was charged to handle, right? It was supposed to remove the water and then shut off once it removed the water. It never removed enough water, so it never shut off. So I see the problem with the cannabis industry is they've been doing the wrong solutions. I take the time, in 2018, I go to Chicago to, in my industry, ASHRAE and AHR is the largest trade show. You guys probably know of the MJ Biz show. It's one of the competing shows of this show. So I go to my MJ Biz show, the HVAC one, right? And I walk the floor to talk to the world's largest dehumidification manufacturers about what are the world's largest dehumidification jobs and what's the solution to the world's largest dehumidification jobs. And unanimously, the world's largest dehumidification jobs are indoor Olympic swimming pool arenas with people, with an arena for people. So put thousands of sweating breathers, because we dump a lot of water in this room when we're in here, in a room with a warm pond, right? You think your indoor farm is hard to control, imagine an indoor pond. So that's the biggest dehumidification load that these companies have, is body of hot water inside an enclosed building with people perspiring. I asked them, well, what's the solution? One word, reheat. Well, reheat is the process where first we cool air to dehumidify the air, and then we add heat back in if we don't need the cold air. So I thought about this process, and I looked at, they're super expensive. They have the most expensive equipment, the longest lead times. You figure if you build Olympic swimming pools, you don't have many jobs, but you're in demand for that job. So on my way back home to Bend, Oregon, I go through the manual for the thermostat that I put in this one particular room that we were struggling with, this first sealed room. And I'm using this thermostat to control both my air conditioner that's out on the ground, so I'm pointing over there, and the dehumidifier that's hanging in the room. This thermostat will do both of those things. And so I'm thinking about that. Like, that thermostat has dehumidification control. I wonder what else it can do that I don't know about. So I get the instructions and I read through and I see the word reheat. It was under my nose and the industry's nose the whole time. It was a program in the thermostat that anybody could use. So I go back to Bend, Oregon, I physically walk into that room, I punch a couple of buttons, and I change that room forever by just simply a control change. And that's why I say today, a lot of the work that we're doing is just going into facilities and setting up controls and doing control strategies to utilize what they own. Well, that little change I did on that thermostat changed this industry. Because worldwide now, I've sent plans to Peru, Puerto Rico, South Africa is right there. I've sent plans to Maine, to Long Beach, we've done work in Missouri now, came to Oklahoma, New Mexico I'm on the phone with, Vermont is calling, Mississippi I've sent design work to, because what I did was I figured out how to simply use the air conditioner that you're already gonna buy, because you already have to buy it. That's the thing, is we're not saying you gotta buy another air conditioner instead of the dehumidifier. I literally go to facilities and do a little hot rod to the air conditioner and then walk over and turn off the $40,000 in dehumidifiers they bought, unplug them from the control system, and the room works better. It happens. So as a result, that's why I was invited to talk to you guys, is I figured out how to practically use HVAC technology, simple stuff, air conditioners, and fix rooms, completely change how rooms function. So that's what we do, and if there's anything about facilities you guys want to ask me a question about, we've seen a lot. I can't tell you about numbers. If you want to tell me how much money guys are making, I don't know.
Got a card?
Yes, I do have cards. And does anybody have any question on anything so far? Or anything about the industry that, yes, ma'am?
All right, so I have a couple. Do you have any projects that you're proud of that you can talk about?
I tried to get some slides up for you guys, but you gotta understand, I was yesterday's call, so we weren't able to get them up. But all of my projects I'm proud of. I asked you to please go on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is cannabis.mechanical, and all of my projects are there. If you scroll all the way back sometime to the beginning of my Instagram, you will see these rooms at Deschutes Growery that I've talked about. And then you'll see the first room that we did in Oklahoma City. And then you'll see these rooms we did in Noble. You'll see all the dry rooms we've done. Everything that we've done in cannabis is documented in there. So it's all there. And I'll tell you, I wanted to get out of construction. Were you gonna ask me a question?
No.
Okay. That's why I ran off to teach hot yoga, was I didn't want to crawl under another house, crawl under another attic ever again. But now I love doing construction again, because now people call me and they say, can you make this? Or can you create this? Or can you design? Yes, absolutely.
Fix this problem, yeah.
You know, so I get to use the 30+ years of experience practically, and we do stuff today that if I was a big HVAC company and with a bunch of employees, I couldn't do the stuff that I do because of the liability.
Right.
But I can do stuff that's out of the box for people, because who am I dealing with? Growers who are what? Farmers. And farmers for all of existence have had to do stuff out of the box. You gotta use what you got. You gotta figure out how to make something out of nothing if you're a farmer. So it's really enjoyable working in the industry, and the hardest part is getting paid. But that's story of life, right?
That's in any
Yeah.
industry.
So I unfortunately have to ask to get paid generally up front and before we do anything, generally. But if you're going into facilities or gonna have a facility or have one, get you an HVAC guy that has worked at Baskin Robbins, you know, that works at restaurants, because, the refrigeration guys, because his tool bag is a little bit more diverse, his knowledge is definitely more diverse.
You definitely have a following on your Instagram.
And it's been exponentially through the roof in the last year. It's like I said, if you're not, it looks like you all mostly use it. It's a good platform for the industry, I think. I'm not a LinkedIn, right? The LinkedIn guys, they're gonna stand up there, right?
What's your scheduling? How far behind are you?
All the way behind. Like, I'm so overloaded. Yeah, I really shouldn't.
Are you taking on more projects? Or,
Where?
Shawnee?
What I tell everybody is, I don't wanna be your 24-hour serviceman, right? So you need that guy, right? You need the local guy. What I wanna do is help your local guy get better.
Okay.
I've come to facilities and stood side by side with HVAC guys and said, do this. And at first they'll be like, why would we do that? Well, because he wants this result, that's why, right?
Okay.
That's one of the challenges with my industry, is my industry comes from tract homes and the prison and the hospital, the schools, your office. They don't come from indoor farming or even outdoor farming, right? They don't come from farming, so they don't understand what you want to do. They understand what they understand.
Right.
And so they want to tell you, oh, you need to do this and do that. So that's the thing that I can help, and I do all the time, is I have conversations with HVAC contractors, and so.
We'll call you.
Any other questions?
Well, you kind of touched on the, like if you're so busy, you can't take on additional projects. Folks like us can look out for when we're trying to hire someone. You said somebody who's in like the commercial atmosphere regarding refrigeration and plumbing and.
Yeah, so HVAC trade, we tend to be residential or commercial. Some do both. We tend to be installers or installation companies or service companies. You want to gravitate towards the guys that do service and commercial because of just their diversity. It doesn't mean that, like, I don't really have that much commercial experience, but I have a lot of diversified experience in the guys that I worked for when I was a mechanic. And so that's really the thing. And I'm sure you find that in employees and people you look for. Diversity is, you know, it doesn't really matter what the experience was, it's just you have some experience doing something in life, you know, that we can train you what you really need to know. Sir, were you gonna ask me something?
Just in contact info. Contact your card.
Absolutely.
What kind of performance do air conditioners provide for dehumidification compared to standard dehums?
So, my son was asking me, what do air conditioners provide in dehumidification compared to dehumidifier?
Mhm.
So, a little bit about the dehumidifiers that this industry uses. They're self-contained in a box in the room. They leave behind heat through the process of dehumidifying the space, right? So cold condensate water goes down the drain pipe and hot air is left in the room, and the air conditioner then is charged with removing the heat from the dehumidifier. So when the dehumidifier doesn't do enough, they add another one. And then the air conditioner has to get bigger because now there's even more heat. So the dehumidifier strategy in growing is really a bad strategy, because one for one, the heat that dehumidifier puts into the room has to be removed by the air conditioner. You paid to put that heat into the room, and now you're gonna pay to take the heat back out of the room, right? But it was for the process of dehumidifying, right? So, and all air conditioners, like I said, air conditioners, dehumidifiers, they're all dehumidifiers, because anytime we cool air below dew point, so if you had a cold drink sitting right there, like that iced tea back there, there's a little bit of dew on it, because it is below the dew point temperature of this room, so the dew is forming on it. And all air conditioners do that. All we have to do is get the cooling coil below the dew point of the space. Well, when you got a room that's 78 degrees and 78% humidity, the dew point is about 78 degrees. And so it's pretty easy to dehumidify with your air conditioners. So the answer is you just gotta run your air conditioners to get more dehumidification out of them than the dehumidifier. Any other questions?
I just learned that myself the other day.
Yeah.
I kept throwing dehumidifiers in there, and it's like, all I'm doing is pumping more hot air, now
Yep.
I eliminated those, fixed the other problem, and now the AC is keeping the room dry.
Point the heat gun at a dehumidifier and you'll see, 100, 120 degree air coming out of them. And that's gotta be taken care of. But you got anything you wanna talk about, add to this conversation?
Well, I was more just trying to lead you towards like the dehus. You can buy like $5,000 dehumidifier, and it does maybe 500 pints per day, whereas your existing air conditioning system, 5-ton AC, will do 500 pints per day.
Right.
Yeah. What about our experience working in the industry and things that you've seen? What can you share about just working? I look at, everybody's got, these people aren't HVAC people, but we're all involved in cannabis. What could you share about cannabis industry?
People tend to spend more money trying to save money instead of just like finding the solutions up front and just biting the bullet and realizing that this facility is going to cost us much money to get established.
Yeah. Yeah, he's right. Oftentimes we go in places and we look like, how could they spend all that money on that, but they don't want to spend the money on this, Or now they're broke because they spent all the money on
Well,
that.
that's what I was saying, a lot of people, they spent it all on the wrong way,
Yeah.
and now when they figured out, oh, there's a different way, now they don't have it.
Yeah, yeah. But we've been able to, like I said, a lot of what we do now is we're not even needing to add electrical or anything other than a little bit of control changing. If the people have some basic, if you got heat and cool, that's what we need to do it. Yes, sir.
So in regards to the control changing, have you found thermostats or environmental control systems that perform better than others that you recommend, that you run with?
Right now, I don't recommend any one particular one. I can tell you that we've had a lot of experience in the last couple of years with Trollmaster, only because they did a good job of infiltrating the industry and becoming the main control company. Because what they did is they went to the retailers that the growers already bought from, like GrowGen and Hawthorne and so on, and they got in with those distribution people and they got distribution. I currently, though, am working with a company called Agrotech out of Wisconsin, and they're 100% American made and built and designed, and everything's from Wisconsin, or at least from the USA. I don't know if it's all from Wisconsin. But they are actively creating a control feature that I help them create that, again, it doesn't mean you gotta buy another piece of equipment. You're just gonna enable a mode that will make the systems work better. That's just it. You gotta remember, the HVAC industry, we don't have the letter D. A lot of people are trying to add this letter D called HVAC-D. Well, really, my industry is the HVAC-R for refrigeration. And refrigeration is dehumidification, and refrigeration is air conditioning, right? So this company is adding this feature called reheat to what they already have, because they already had heat, they already had cool, but when we do the two together, then we get this process called reheat, where first we cool the air, and then we add heat back to it for a net result of dehumidifying the air, but maintaining about the same temperature. That's the goal, is have about the same temperature for the plants.
How big is your company? How big is the
It's just
team?
me and him,
Small,
on
tiny?
purpose. I've had employees, and I don't want to have employees. If he wants to have employees, we can have employees, but I did that I wanna enjoy working, and being an employer isn't what I do. I don't think too many people work for Michael and Leonardo, he told them what to do, but they didn't have employees. And I feel like that. I feel like we're artists and we're creating new things for people that a lot of the things we do, people really don't even agree with because they just haven't seen it, so they don't understand it, so it's a challenge for their mind.
Yeah, our industry is somewhat subjective because, we like to hold our cards very close to our chest and keep our proprietary, what we think
Yeah.
we've been doing in our bathtub or in a basement or in a pool for so many years, and then scaling out where we think it's applicable, so.
Yeah.
Outside objective approaches are so welcome, and your
That is
expertise
the
as
thing,
well.
like a lot of the real true people that are in this industry that I work with, they got records. They're almost all felons. I mean, half the people I work with, if they're young men, for some reason they feel it necessary to state that. And I'm like, bud, you don't have to tell that story anymore, But that's the thing, is it's a very colorful organization or industry, not organization, but industry, And the diversity, is very broad. Oklahoma, now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Oklahoma, and if you're from Oklahoma, you should know that there's a big ecological disaster that's happening in Oklahoma, and it's in the rural counties. I don't know if you guys know this, you may know this because you're here, but we have counties here that you don't have to have a building permit, you don't have to have any inspections, you don't have to pay any fees because there's no building department. No inspector's coming because there's no inspector. And nowhere in my life before living here in Oklahoma, I lived in California and Oregon. There was no way you could build a building without permits, inspections, and plans and inspectors. But people here in Oklahoma, there's counties that people are going out on the dirt that they bought and they dig a hole in the ground and they put anything they want into the ground that they want to right now. And it's absolutely 100% unregulated. Nobody's coming. And you might say, well, what about the EPA? Well, apparently the EPA is too small to take care of everything, right? So it's just an observation from being in the field, and seeing what's going on out back of the building, or out in the back of the building and stuff like that, And it's a shame because this license has been given to do something legal and people are still doing illegal things with it. It's the way it is. Can't change it. I do it too, for sure, 100%. But when you see what we see, like 50 greenhouses that are falling down because the operators are not good business people, right? And you know who I'm talking about. And so that needs to be fixed in Oklahoma. And I have a feeling the emerging states have learned from Oklahoma too, and people aren't gonna do it like Oklahoma did again. But it's been a unique ride. Did anybody else move to Oklahoma for cannabis or come here from somewhere else for any other reason? Yeah. Where'd you guys come from?
Texas.
Yeah, we work for a few Texas people. They still kind of live in Texas too.
Yeah. It's our family down there. We retired up here.
Yeah, it's nice to be part of construction and working with people that, even if it's a struggle, even if you're like, damn, it's hard, but you're really striving, right? You're trying.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good energy working with people that are trying to build businesses and make something and it's fun, Well, I like spending people's money. I'd like to figure out how to get more for it, but it's a good time. But anyhow, thank you guys for letting me hang out with you today. I hope you enjoyed. We aren't showing at this. We've done a couple of shows, and I got to where it's like, why are we traveling to shows when I can't return every phone call and take care of everything that I have? So, but I definitely enjoyed going and doing that too.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, it was great talk.
Thank you for inviting me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
sure. So lunch is from 12:30 to 1:30.